Hello, friend. Are you suffering from anxiety? Are you getting excessively nervous before or during an important exam? Does stress make you think you forgot all you studied for the exam as you look at those questions? If you do, you may have testophobia or exam fever. Did you know that Albert Einstein suffered from exam fever, or Winston Churchill only managed to write his name when he was going for an entrance exam? Hi, my name is Azita, and I'm so glad you're here. I teach leadership and executive functioning skills. I share tips and strategies you need to excel academically and in life. When I was in high school, I skipped my math exams by pretending to be unwell, and let me confess that I still have bad dreams about failing or arriving late to my exams. So why are we scared of exams? And why some of us are more scared than others? Let's think about this for a second. Fear is an emotion, and it can be caused by a real threat, like being chased by a lion in the middle of the forest, or it could be an imaginary one, like the fear of failing at our exam. Test anxiety is really the result of the fear of failing at school, and it can create a lot of complicated and troubling emotional setbacks in a student's psyches. You might know the rate of anxiety and depression among youth is rising. But let us first talk about one thing we all need to be aware of, and that's the fact that a teen's brain is not fully developed to perform a lot of things we as adults can do. So what I'm saying is that this part of the brain called the frontal lobe is fully developed later in life, usually in young adulthood. The frontal lobe is the decision-making part of the brain, and it's responsible for executive functioning skills. Executive functioning skills are skills like time management, organizational skills, and planning. The problem in these areas are often labeled as laziness or lack of interest, whereas really, in fact, the challenges in these areas in youth are mostly caused by the immaturity of frontal lobe. I'm sure you've heard how athletes prepare for their games. They know they need to be in top shape mentally and physically to perform at their best. So they use brain tricks to stay mentally focused and motivated to perform. This is called priming the brain. So how can we prime our brain? Well, before we jump in, let's think about the following questions for a minute. So does our habits and routines have anything to do with stress and anxiety? Can multitasking increase stress and anxiety? Do you think media, TV, and other social media outlets contribute to fear-based thoughts? Let's reflect on these questions for a minute, and we will come back to them later on. If we are stressed and anxious, there is something going on in our mind that's causing it. So what we want to do is to get rid of those stressful thoughts and replace them with beliefs that can actually help us, not scare us. We need to know that stress is really the leading cause of 90% of diseases. So going back to my previous two questions, multitasking is a big mistake because it causes confusion, lack of focus, and ultimately stress and poor performance. Also, media outlets are bombarding us with bad and negative news. So we need to really minimize the screen time to a very minimum. So how do we know we're stressed? We need to know the symptoms of stress. So fear and anxiety can show in our attitude and actions, and they can manifest in the form of nervousness, fidgeting, lack of focus, nausea, sweaty hands, sleepiness, nosebleed, anger, memory blocks, and more. It's very important to explain that anxiety and stress is only in the mind and it doesn't exist. We create stress with our thoughts. We are what we think about. So the first step is to accept this as a fact. There are 3 areas in the brain that are involved in creating our thoughts and concerns and also creating stress. These 3 parts are the prefrontal cortex, the hippocampus and the amygdala. The prefrontal cortex is the rational mind. The hippocampus stores our memories and emotions, and the amygdala is sending the stress responses to the body. So here's what happens. When we think negative thoughts, the prefrontal cortex is where we initiate the thought and rationalize it. Sometimes the past memories are creating negative thoughts and stress, and that's the hippocampus. When we feel there is a real and tangible threat and we need to protect ourselves, our amygdala is at work. In any case, the stress caused by our thoughts or memories trigger the amygdala. So this is why a negative and scary thought or a bad memory or seeing a lion in our 10 feet can make our palms sweaty, make our heart racing, and we want to run. Imagine we're trying to take a test, we're going for an interview, you have a deadline, or whatever that is. We're activating the fear center of the brain, the amygdala. The fear center of the brain will then release neurochemicals like cortisol, epinephrine, or norepinephrine. This rush of neurochemicals in our bloodstream creates a huge amount of energy that we use to freeze, run away, fight, or faint. You see, it's good to have these reactions in the body to defend ourselves in case of real danger. But 90% of the time, it's just an imagined and false alarm, which has devastating effects in the mind and body. So what do we need to do? What tools and techniques would help us? How can we prime our brain? Number one thing we can do is to be positive. When we start seeing life and events from a positive stance, we stop complaining and worrying about little things. As a result, we save a lot of mental energy and we can spend that energy on what's important and will become more creative and productive. So here's what we can do to stop the flow of those negative thoughts and turn them into positive. Write your negative thoughts for 2 or 3 days in a diary. Turn all those negative statements into positive statements. Example, I'm not ready for the exam into I'm ready for this exam and I will rock it. It's an awful day into I'm going to have an amazing day and good things are happening in my life today. Practice this process every time you notice you had a negative thought. It's by practice only that we can replace a bad habit into a useful habit. Try to control your thoughts like an observer watching them. Take a distance from yourself and try to observe yourself thinking these negative thoughts. Then gently put that thought aside. Literally watch yourself putting it aside and choose a thought that is positive and uplifting at this moment, something that makes you feel good. Remember, you can do this and you can control what happens in your mind. Number 2, relax the mind and body. To relax ourselves, the first thing to do, as we just said, is to observe and assess thoughts and emotions. We can talk to someone we trust and seek help. We can take some time off from the work we're doing and go back to it later if possible. We can do some physical activity to bring some oxygen to the brain and muscles and release some dopamine or happiness hormones. Third is visualization. This is my favorite technique and it really works. Visualizing a result we want over and over again builds cells of recognition in our memory bank. And it's the most important step to have what we want. In fact, it will help us to consciously focus on what we want in our mind, and by doing that, every cell in the body vibrates and resonates with everything that's harmony with the frequency of what we want, both on a physical and non-physical level. It will move us toward the frequency of what we want. This is how the image we create in our mind will be manifested, because this image becomes fixed and automatic in the brain. Visualizing is conditioning the mind to think about the result we want to create all the time, and thinking about it often enough will create familiar neural pathways in the brain. So how do we do it? Imagine whatever you desire to happen in your mind and try to see the details of how it would look like. See the colors, feel the emotions associated with having what you want, hear the sounds. Now, what can we do to release anxiety before the exams? The first thing would be to take 6 deep breaths and feel the rush of oxygen to your brain cells. Then imagine yourself in a beautiful and relaxing environment like at a beach. You are listening to the chirping of colorful birds and enjoying the view. You're smelling the scent of fresh flowers. Now take 6 more deep breaths and see yourself after the exam, happy and very content. You know you did a great job and you're so stoked. Then repeat to yourself, I'm super ready for this exam. I will answer all the questions with ease as I know them all and they are all in my mind. I'm relaxed and in control of my brain. All is fine. Going through this exercise for a few minutes, preferably the night before the exam, upon waking up in the morning and then a few minutes before the exam will be all we need to do. Make sure to take 6 deep breaths 3 times while visualizing. Slow breathing is next. Slow breathing can decrease the amygdala or the fear center's activity and increase the level of relaxation in the body. So take a deep breath in for 5 seconds and blow up like you're blowing out through a straw. And if you do this 5 second in, 5 second out with 6 to 10 breaths, you're going to deactivate the fear response center, and that's actually is going to activate your thinking center or the frontal lobe in your brain. Next is affirmations. We can do it while visualizing or separately. So write some comforting sentences like the one we practiced before. You can write affirmations about any goal. Affirmations allow us to focus on our goal, and with patience and repetition, they will become automatic and eventually a new pattern in our mind. So examples of affirmation could be, I'm ready, I'm intelligent, I'm hardworking, I can do this, I have what I need. Next is meditation. Meditation is awesome and is similar to deep breathing relaxation exercise. Some meditations are guided with music. We can also meditate by closing our eyes and trying to empty our heads from thoughts and by focusing on our breathing. The focus on the natural rhythm of the breathing distracts us from thinking negative thoughts and relaxes the body. Good sleep is also very crucial. 8 hours of sleep is great and is recommended every night, and especially on the night before the exam, because a long and deep sleep helps amygdala to rest and be relaxed. Sleep in a dark and cool room. Now we need to mention that some stress in life actually is not too bad, and sometimes fear can be used as a fuel for action. So here's what we can do to turn fear into action. Ask yourself in a calm and relaxed manner the following questions. What am I thinking right now? What am I feeling right now? What is my intention right now? Is my intention to move forward, or is my intention to stay in this fearful state? Ask yourself, what is one thing you can do to move forward? We can take one action, and that one action can actually rewire the brain. Like taking one small action, like deciding to take the test anyway and deciding to do well, can neutralize the fear over time. Now let's talk about preparation for exams. Preparing well in advance is the very best thing we can do to avoid anxiety and stress. Make sure you study your material over time and review it a few times, because repetition is the key to learning and remembering the material later on. Also, on the night before the exam, don't try to learn new material and only review what you have already learned. Now let's talk about organization. One of the best things we can do to reduce test anxiety is staying organized and managing our time. Things like writing our priorities, arranging our schedule for the week, planning our days ahead can really help us and make our life a lot easier. So first, make a list of all the to-dos that you have in your head, write them down on a piece of paper, create an electronic document, use sticky notes or whatever works for you. Just keep writing until you have everything you need to do out of your head and on paper. Then choose the 3 most important tasks from your list and put those tasks on your schedule. Then do those 3 tasks and repeat until every task is complete. On the day of the exam, when you get the test material, the first thing you need to do, if there are any formulas, outline, dates, or anything that you have learned and don't want to forget, write them down somewhere on the top, at the margins, or back of the paper. This way, they're going to be there and don't bother you anymore. Next, take 4 deep breaths and read the directions carefully. Make sure to underline and highlight keywords so you know what to do. One thing you really have to remember is to divide up your time to the number of questions and also leave some time for the review. Do that at the beginning and make sure you're tracking your time. Stay positive and answer as many questions as you can, and even guess for those you're not sure, unless you'll be penalized for wrong answers. Sometimes teachers give some credit for partially correct answers. Stretch if you need to, and don't forget the positive self-talk like I can do this and all is fine. Don't forget to review your answers. Try not to change answers for multiple questions unless you know for a fact that you made a mistake, because most of the time the first answer is the right answer. And after you receive your results, remember to evaluate what you have done right and wrong. Use this information to relearn and review what you have missed in the exam so you be ready and do better in the next test. And be happy that you're learning and growing, as this is the real reason for you taking the test. In the next videos, we will talk about the tools we need to build success in life. You will love it, I promise. Stay with me. See you in the next videos. To your success.